Now, folks, what we're going to talk about for the rest of this show, how much time do we have here? Oh, we got a lot of time. Quite frankly, I'm going to recommend you do something at home while you're listening to this. In fact, I'm going to unbutton my shirt here just because I need to. I really need to. You'll understand when we get into this. I'm going to recommend you do something at home, and that's grab whatever alcohol you've got in your freezer or your cabinet or wherever you keep it, and make a drink or two, because we are going to focus on Lyndon Carlson. And believe me, Representative Carlson, you're going to need a drink to listen to Mr. Carlson says. He was recently on In the Know, which is another local show here on NWCT on Wednesday nights. It's a pretty good show, I'll admit. Juanita Hoff does a pretty good job of hosting, and there's not a lot of programs other than hers and mine that really focus on local issues a lot. There's Brooklyn Park Now and a few other things, but Lyndon was on there, who served since what, the Spanish-American War? World War I? No, I'm just kidding. 1972. 1972 is when he was first elected. And I'm going to have to listen to this. Now, I'm serious. When I tell you this, folks, I am being 100% serious. I have to have a drink or two. And guess what I got? Oh, it's nice and frozen, some Jack Daniels. And I'm telling you, you're going to need to have, I'm going to make this one rather strong. To listen to his answers, you're going to have something. You're going to have something that lets you chill out a little bit. I forgot the bitters at the liquor store, so I guess it'll just be a whiskey 7. But I want to share with you, I got a lot to say about what Mr. Carlson says. Now, a lot of it, good. A lot of it is the typical Democratic talking points, their main themes they constantly do. But he makes comments about redistricting, about this daycare bill, a few other things. It's just very insightful to listen to. So first, Mr. Carlson talks about he represents 45B. Now listen to Lyndon Carlson describe what 45B is. Roll the tape.
Very good.
It's all the city of Robbinsdale, a large part of Crystal, about a third of Golden Valley, and a tiny slice of New Hope.
Well, actually, it's interesting how that's described. All of Robbinsdale, yes, that's true. Most of Crystal, yes, it's 6 of the 9 precincts, and it's the northeast part of Golden Valley, and then a sliver of New Hope. Well, it's funny how there's only, 2 registered voters in that sliver of New Hope? Would that be Lyndon Carlson's house? The Carlson curve, ladies and gentlemen. I have to drink to that. Oh, boy. Jeez. So the Carlson curve there is the 2 people in New Hope. So Mr. Carlson represents Crystal, Robbinsdale, and Golden Valley, and lives in New Hope. How wonderful. Political deal, anyone? Anyone cut a political deal? My goodness. All right. On to the 2011 session, which of course was from January to May, and really didn't get over until mid-July with the government shutdown and so on. I want to share with you what Lyndon Carlson thought of the 2011 legislative bill, or legislative session. Listen to this.
When you mention the first year of the biennium, that's the budget year.
Right.
And when this session started, I indicated that it was going to be about the budget, and the budget.
Yeah.
And that certainly turned out to be true, beyond the normal time for the session. It was also a session that had, I think, the fewest bills that were actually passed into law.
Right, I remember that.
Something like 70 bills that became law, where historically there would typically be a few hundred bills, 200 or 300 that would become law. Sometimes a benchmark year, maybe even more than that. That doesn't always mean new laws, by the way, because sometimes a bill is repealing legislation or modifying legislation, or it may be something that's totally new. In fact, typically there's probably about 3,000 bills that are introduced, but the vast majority of them do not become law. And so 70 bills was probably the lowest number of bills in my time in the legislature. And then when you figure that or look at the fact that the budget was the overriding issue, and you looked at the number of budget bills, and if you were to subtract that from the 70, you know what I mean when I say it was going to be a session all about the budget.
Okay, it was about the budget, the budget, the budget. Now, look at how he laments the fact that only 70 bills actually were created during this session. You know, that's something I want to celebrate. There was only 70 bills. 3,000 get introduced. 3,000 bills. You know, and why is it? Can I ask a dumb question? Why is it Minnesota? You know, Minnesota has the most legislators of any state. 201. We have the most legislators. We're going to get into redistricting in a second here, and I'm going to explain to some of you how your districts might change if you haven't heard the Sarah Anderson of District 43, who was the chair of the redistricting committee. But he laments the fact that only 70 bills passed. Boy, you know what? That's about, you know, what the budget is most of that. That's plenty as far as I'm concerned. I mean, so if there's 3,000 bills that get introduced, there's 201 legislators. That's 15 bills per legislator. I mean, oh, hold on, I got a drink to that. Where have you been all my life? Again, remember, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about Lyndon Carlson, so I need a little bit to get me through it here. Next is where Mr. Carlson here talks about redistricting and the whole process and why and how and the sort of finagling process here that happened during the session. And it typically happens with redistricting. Here is Mr. Carlson. Roll tape.
Having said that, though, one thing that I should mention, because it's still unresolved, and that's redistricting. You know, we had the census for the year 2000, and the result of that then is that you have to redraw the congressional district lines and the legislative district lines to reflect shifts in the population. So a redistricting bill was passed, and that's often one of the more partisan bills. And so it was passed by the majority caucus, I think virtually straight party line votes, and then ultimately vetoed by the governor. So what's happened now is that there's been a judicial panel appointed, which has happened more often than not in recent decades, to actually draw the lines. And I think the courts have typically done a pretty fair job of doing that. So that was a major bill outside the budget.
Okay, now think about what he just said right there. Let me get a drink. First off, it was based on the 2010 census, I think, not 2000. You're just a decade off there, Lyndon. But listen to how he talks about how it's going to end up in the courts. You know, you and I, my friends, all know that the courts are not supposed to decide this stuff. The courts have become, unfortunately, the final arbiters of law. Now, that's not what the judiciary is supposed to be doing. They're supposed to interpret law and not make it. And of course, it's a partisan bill. Of course, Dayton vetoed it, of course. And it is going to be decided by the courts. Now, unfortunately, who the hell knows when that's going to happen? I mean, it may not happen till after our caucus and stuff next year. You know, which is, what, February? We're a February Super Tuesday state. And then you add to it, political parties have to endorse candidates, and we don't even know what the borders are going to be. So, and just to let people know here, the proposal from Representative Anderson's, Sarah Anderson's committee, currently Senate District 45, which is where I live, and it's where Mr. Carlson is 45B. 45 is all of Crystal, all of New Hope, all of Robbinsdale, the northeast part of Golden Valley, about a third of Golden Valley, and the far east part of Plymouth. I think it's only 3 precincts, say from Armstrong North out to Zachary Lane. It's actually just a real sliver. I think Plymouth has 20-something precincts, only 3 of them are in SD 45. Well, the new proposal is to make 45 District 36. Now, 36, now the numbers don't mean anything. That's not important. When I was a kid, we were District 46. But 36 basically would be, again, all of Crystal, all of New Hope, all of Robbinsdale. And we would go from the, not from the northeast corner of Golden Valley to the northwest corner, and then we'd have part of Medicine Lake and Plymouth in the southwest. Kind of interesting. The CD5 boundary is supposed to change going north. Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center are going to be part of CD5. Currently, I believe 62nd Avenue is the cutoff, which means I was only about 10 blocks away here from not having Keith Ellison represent me in Congress. So, unfortunately, it looks like I'm looking for 10 more years of that, and that requires another drink. Oh. Okay, we're ready to get back to Mr. Carlson. Now, just a little bit about that on the census and where it's headed. And who the heck knows with redistricting what's eventually going to happen? It's just supposed to be based on the population because the politicians try to carve out things for themselves.